Hello everybody and welcome to this tutorial about Firewill's air weapon system mod for ArmA 3. You can find a link to download the mod in the description below, and you will also find a table of contents down there. If you want to skip between the different chapters of the video, you can do that right there. Now, I've done a previous video about the mod, but it's almost 2 years old now and it's outdated and obsolete, so you can go ahead and disregard that since I'll talk about all the important stuff right now. I'll also try to keep this general, not focusing on any specific aircraft, so you can apply this to all the aircraft that are compatible with the mod. Which brings me right to my next point. What do you need to get the mod working? First of all, obviously you need the mod itself, the air weapon system, and you'll also need an aircraft that's compatible with it. Now you can use all the aircraft made by Firewill, the whole standalone series, including this beautiful F-14 and the F-35 and the F-15 and the F-16 and whatever else there is. You can also use Spartan and Sol's F-18 mod, and as far as I'm aware that's pretty much it for compatible aircraft. If you have anything else and I've missed it, please let me know. First of all, let's head over to the F-35 and check out what we have in there. We'll also have a quick look at the F-14 simply because it's an older aircraft and it has some special features that I want to talk about. But for flying, we'll take out the F-35 today. Yeah. First of all, what do you need in order to get the loadout menu available to you? You will need this object, which is called Missile Carrier for Rearming. If you look that up in the editor, you'll find it. And you need to be close to this object with your aircraft, or you can also use a standard NATO ammo truck. So if you just use a NATO ammo truck, that does the trick as well. So let's get right in here. And once you're close to this object I mentioned before, you can see the option available here, Open AMS. Once you hit that, you'll be presented with this loadout menu screen. You can select the different payloads on all the weapon stations. You can also use the repair and the refuel functions, and you can access this cosmetics customization menu, I'll just call it. It's basically called Aircraft Decoration Extended System, and it basically serves as a customization menu for different skins or emblems or stuff like that. I'll let you guys figure that out for yourself since it's not really crucial. Now let's talk about the actual weapons. We'll work our way from the outside to the inside and see what we've got there. So the wingtips are reserved for AIM-9 series missiles and the AIM-132. Those are all short-range, air-to-air, infrared guided missiles. Alright, so they'll be short-range and highly maneuverable. The AIM-9X is the newest one, so I just usually take that and trust it's also the best one. Now further inwards we have a lot bigger selection of weapons available. We'll just work our way from the top to the bottom. We already have met the M9 series. You can get them in single or dual rails in this on this pylon, since it's a bit of a more stable and center located pylon. You can get single and dual rails for them. You can also get the MBDA Meteor, which is a British manufactured air-to-air missile. As far as I'm aware, it's only used by Swedish armed forces at this point, so I kind of disregarded it. Sorry, Swedish people. Moving further down, you have the AIM-120 series. That's a medium-range air-to-air missile, and this one is radar-guided, so it has its own radar seeker built into the head of the missile, and these will be a lot higher range than the M9. You can engage targets up to over 8 kilometers out, and usually since they're radar guided, flares won't do too much against them, so they're a pretty nice weapon if you're far enough away and you don't have to dogfight. Moving down, we have the GBU series. The GBU stands for Guided Bomb Unit, and the 12th is a laser guided bomb. So the Paveway 2 is basically a laser guided bomb. You can get those in single and dual versions. I do not know what the difference between those two is, since they actually even named the same, so I can't tell you. One has a white tip, one has a green tip, that's what I can say. Now the eGBU is extended GBU or enhanced GBU 12. It's enhanced because it is basically a hybrid between a GPS and a laser guided bomb. How all these guidance systems work, we'll talk about once we actually fly. I'm just going to go through the weapon naming right now and not talk about how they're actually operated. The Paveway 4 is pretty much the same as the GBU-12, so it's another hybrid laser and GPS guided bomb. And the GBU-30 series. Now, once you have a 3 in front of the, or first number is a 3, you are usually dealing with a GPS guided bomb, and the GBU-38 is your standard 500-pound GPS guided bomb, and the GBU-32 is 1,000 pounds GPS guided bomb. And as you can see, you can either get 2 of the 500 pounders or 1,000 pounder. It's as it suits you. Take whatever you like. The GBU-54 is another hybrid variant. It's called LJDAM because it's a laser-guided JDAM, so you can use both laser guidance and GPS guidance on this one as well. Now we've got the SDB series. These are named small diameter bombs because they're only 250 pounds. You can carry a lot more of those than of the regular 500 plus pound bombs, but they're really not to be underestimated. Especially the SDB II is extremely powerful because it can use GPS, laser, and radar guidance all at the same time. How that works, you'll find out later in the video. But this is an extremely powerful weapon, especially for anti-vehicle warfare. Now the AGM here might be a bit misleading because AGM, as we'll see further down the list, usually stands for air-to-ground missile. But this one is not a missile, it's actually a glide bomb. And the glide bomb has wings which unfold once you drop it from the aircraft, which greatly extend its range, so you can basically drop it from far away and not expose your aircraft to any anti-air fire. The JSOW stands for Joint Standoff Weapon because you can drop it from standoff range without having to fly over the target and, as I said, enter the danger zone. The AGM-54A1 is pretty much the same as the previous version, only that instead of a cluster bomb warhead, the A1 is just built in with fitted with a regular HE payload. Mark 82 is your standard all-day use iron bomb, so GPB stands for General Purpose Bomb. And the Snake Eye is a variant of the GPB which is equipped with fins or wings as well. Unlike the AGM-54 though, these wings aren't meant to increase the range but quite the opposite. They slow down the bomb as it falls and basically delay the time of impact on the ground. Now why would you want to do that? Because if you're doing a low pass over the target and dropping a bomb, usually the bomb when you release it has about the same speed as the aircraft, so it will reach the ground and the impact point round about the same time as you're right above it, and you'll get caught in the blast. But if you slow down the descent of the bomb with these wings, you'll buy enough time to get out of the blast zone before the bomb explodes. The KGGB is, as far as I'm aware, a Korean variant of the GBU-38 GPS-guided 500-pound bomb. Alright, now we've arrived at the CBU series. CBU stands for Cluster Bomb Unit, and the CBU-87 is your regular unguided cluster bomb, which will disperse a load of small high-explosive bomblets in the drop area. PDU 5 are leaflet bombs, as the name says. They'll just drop paper leaflets on the ground for everyone to read. You can customize the leaflets that are dropped in your mod. I've not done it, so I can't really tell you any concrete details, but I think it's a pretty cool feature that's been added by the Laws of War DLC, so if you want, go ahead and check that out. The Mark 20 Rockeye and the CBU-89 Gator are, as far as I'm aware, pretty much the same. They're both cluster mine layer containers, I would say. So basically once you drop them, they will lay a minefield of anti-tank and anti-personnel mines on the ground. Just be aware that both friendly and enemy units will be affected by those mines, so choose carefully where to drop that. The CBU-97 sensor-fused weapon is basically a standard cluster bomb, unguided, but it has special smart bomblets that it and these bomblets realize, or basically sense, if there's a magnetic object like a tank below them, and if there is, they will detonate a shaped charge below them, and they will try and crack that tank from above. So this is basically an area of effect cluster anti-tank bomb, so to speak. The CBU-103 wind-corrected munitions dispenser is a regular cluster bomb payload with a GPS guidance. So this is GPS guided. And the CBU-105, if you've paid attention before, is basically just a combination of the SFW and the wind-corrected munitions dispenser. So it's a GPS guided anti-tank cluster bomb. Alright, now we have the AGMs. AGMs, as I said before, usually stands for air-to-ground missile, and the AGM-88 is an anti-radiation missile, which means it will home onto enemy radar signatures. So if there is not signatures, but actually objects that emit radar radiation. So basically, if the enemy is deploying an air defense radar of some sort, both on a vehicle or stationary, then you can lock that on and fire. Now, bear in mind that this doesn't have a really powerful warhead. It can't really penetrate any armor, but usually things that have radars don't have thick armor, so that's basically what you have to trust if you use that missile. The AGM-65, as you can see, there are a lot different variants of those, and those letters might be confusing, and you will probably forget them right after this video. So if you have to remember them, you can do two things: either rewatch the video or look it up on Wikipedia. What you can also do is go to the editor and go to the pilot settings of your aircraft and hover with your mouse, hover over the different Mavericks that are available, and it will give you a short description of how they're guided. This, by the way, counts for absolutely every weapon in the firewill arsenal. So if you forget any of those names, if you forget what SFW stands for, or which of those was guided, which of those was anti-tank, just open up the editor and check it out in the pilot settings menu, hover over the different weapons, and you'll get the description. Okay, so we'll go at it from top to bottom. The AGM-65D is a IR guided anti-tank missile. You realize that you can get some of those in single and triple rails, and some only in single rails. That's because the D and the H, which is what you can get triple versions of, the D and the H are fitted with smaller and lighter warheads. That's why you can carry 3 of those and only one of the last 3 variants. The H doesn't stand for anything as far as I'm aware. The H is an electro-optical guided missile, which basically locks onto moving objects or contrast between terrain and the tank. Those are especially useful if IR doesn't lock on, because the vehicle hasn't been running its engine and isn't hot enough for IR to detect it. But the problem is they'll be very useless if there's bad weather, night, rain, fog, any of that, and you don't have a clear visual of the target, so the electro-optical guidance system doesn't really work. You've got those in single rails again here, and the AGM-65G is another IR guided missile, which this time has the heavy warhead fitted, so you can only carry one of those, but you can crack bigger tanks. The AGM-65K is the counterpart of the AGM-65H, which makes it electro-optical guided with a big warhead. And now the only Maverick that is conveniently named the AGM-65L for laser-guided, big warhead, laser-guided anti-tank missile. Alright, now we've got the Hydras. Hydra, I'm pretty sure most of you are familiar with the concept. They are unguided rockets, forward-facing rockets, with different warheads and differently sized containers. The LAU-131 can carry a total of 7 rockets, and the LAU-61 can carry 19 rockets. As for the HE warhead, you have 2 different variants, the M151 and the M229. The latter, the 229, is the bigger one, but as you might have noticed, you can only carry a single container of those, while you can carry a triple container of the light one. So make the decision for yourself. The CRV-7 is basically, as far as I'm aware, a Canadian Hydra HE warhead rocket. Okay, now you can see that there are plenty of different variants of the Hydras with different warheads. I think everyone knows what high explosive anti-tank is. There's also flare rocket, and now you've got the multi-purpose submunitions. Which basically means that this is sort of a mini cluster bomb rocket. So on the target, it will project very high amount of small bomblets, which cause damage in a larger area. The MPP stands for multi-purpose penetrator. This rocket is especially used against fortified positions, hardened bunkers, that kind of thing, because they're designed to penetrate steel, concrete, and other defenses. And right here we have the anti-personnel Hydra, which will not use an explosive warhead, but instead will fire, or basically disassemble into small flechette darts that don't deal any real destructive damage to vehicles or buildings in the target area, but instead will hurt infantry that's around there. WP stands for white phosphorus, and RP stands for red phosphorus, and then you've got the regular smoke ones as well. And now we have the APKWS, which stands for Advanced Precision Kill Weapon System. These are basically Hydra rockets modified with a laser seeker to be guided, which is pretty useful because you can carry a lot more of those than of the regular AGM, and you can also fit them with stuff like HE warheads or multi-purpose penetrators, so they're useful for a lot of different mission profiles. The Poignard is, I think that's French, so sorry for pronouncing it wrong, is another guided Hydra derivative, which instead uses IR guidance. Now, the Zuni rockets are basically the same concept as the Hydras, only they're bigger. The Hydras use 2.75 inch diameter as far as I'm aware, and the Zuni are 4 inch. So you can usually only carry 4 of those in a single container. As you can see, some rails support dual containers, so you can carry a total of 8 per station. As before, you've got those with several different warheads, but I've explained all those before, so no need to go over it again. And again, we have a laser-guided variant of the Zunis as well, only that these are purely HE, so there's no anti-tank or multi-purpose penetrator variant of those. Last, and in my opinion also least, you've got the Su-25 flare dispenser, which will drop a flare on a parachute below you to illuminate the ground for, infantry or ground support units. If you move further inward, you'll see that the second or the third pylon, actually, from the outside, doesn't have any new stuff compared to the one we've been at before. Only it's a bit more. It's got a bit more carrying capacity, so you can, for example, carry 3 Rockeyes or 2 SFWs, that kind of thing. So you can, especially in the cluster bomb section, you've got a bit more quantity to carry. All right, now these center ones are all internal weapon stations, which means they're restricted in what they can carry. This one cannot carry any rockets or air-to-ground missiles. It can only carry free-fall bombs, air-to-air missiles, and that's pretty much it. The reason for this is obviously if you have them inside your aircraft and you've got forward-facing missiles, forward-firing missiles, you'll blow yourself up. The weapon station below that is reserved only for air-to-air missiles. You can grab either the AIM-9 series once again, or the AIM-120. I usually grab one of those AIM-120s, or 2 of those actually, simply because you cannot equip them on the outside, and with 2 sidewinders and 2 AMRAMs you're usually pretty settled in terms of self-defense against aerial targets. Yeah, that's pretty much it. You can decide if you want to grab a gunpowder or not, that's up to you. I mean, in the F-35, there's really not a big point in using your gun. but especially on aircraft like the A-10, the gun is obviously absolutely essential. Right, if you want to then apply your loadout, or if you want to then save your loadout actually, what you can do is just add a name in here like tutorial and hit preset add. Now as you've seen, the weapon system restarts, all your changes are gone, but in here you have the tutorial preset. You can then hit apply if you want to, and it'll just apply a preset as if you hit apply down here. If you want to get rid of it again, you can hit preset remove and it's gone. Now I've already set up a preset I want to demonstrate, so I'm not going to change it, but if you wanted to apply your custom presets, you can hit apply right here. Before we head out now and see all those weapons in action, I want to do a quick section about the F-14 because here I can demonstrate a really important feature of the firewill air weapon system, which is the targeting pods. Now the F-35, the one over there, is basically a flying NASA supercomputer, so it's got everything you need in terms of electronics, countermeasures, that kind of thing. You don't need additionals in there. However, every other aircraft in the firewill arsenal will need special electronics pods in order to access all the functionality. For example, the F-14 has a lot of different special pods or containers available. I'll just go through them as I find them. Now the ACMI tax pod is the first that jumps to our attention. It is a training pod, which is, as far as I'm aware, used by pilots in training, which it basically records the flight maneuvers of the pilot for later analysis on the ground. Now, I have not actually used that, employed that in the firewill mod yet, so if anyone does do that successfully, please let me know. I'd be interested in knowing how that works exactly. As you can see, you've got a lot of different, mostly older weapons available on the F-14, but I'm not going to talk about those in depth. If you need any info about those, I recommend Google. The CATM series is usually a training missile. I've not used those in action either. If you do, please let me know. I'm really interested in all this training stuff, but I haven't gotten the time to excessively test those yet. Now this is really important. Okay, so every aircraft aside from the F-35 needs a targeting pod to access all the fire control functionalities, especially stuff like GPS guidance, lasing targets. All the precision bombing functionality needs to be done via a targeting pod. The targeting pod on the F-14 is called Lantern. You will also find targeting pods like the Lightning or the Sniper XR, depending on which aircraft you use. They will also only be available on very specific slots. For example, the 8B slot, which is here, is the only slot that supports targeting pods on the F-14. So if you look around on other pods, especially on the exact opposite one, you see that there is no such thing. You need to be really careful to grab one if you do an air-to-ground operations of any sort. If you're only going for a pure CAP, pure combat air patrol, air-to-air warfare loadout, you can ditch it. Otherwise, I strongly recommend taking it. What else do we have? This is a GPS, sorry, it's an electronic countermeasure. So this is a sort of an ECM jammer, an external one. You've got those available on many different aircraft. They might be called ANLQ 167 or ANLQ, God damn it, 181. There are different names for different versions, but they all pretty much do the same. They will give you a scroll wheel option to employ the electronic countermeasures system against radar-guided missiles only. Alright, as far as I'm aware, I've talked about pretty much everything that's important. You've got practice bombs and laser-guided training rounds on this one as well. This is called an extended chaff adapter. I haven't really found a use for it yet. Maybe you guys can find out what it does. According to the name, it will add more chaff capacity to your aircraft. Alright, and the TARPS is used for photo reconnaissance, so it's basically used to take pictures of the ground for later analysis in the technical operation cell. Okay, that concludes my part about the F-14. I will get out again and head over to the F-35 for our actual in-flight section of the video. Okay, so as I said before, I will not be focusing on any flight specifics of certain aircraft because I'm trying to keep this general. I'm trying to keep this about the air weapon system, not about any specific aircraft. So I won't be talking about how to fly this or that. This is not within the scope of this video. If you need help or if you need tips on how to fly aircraft in ArmA, there are specific tutorials that cover just that, so I suggest you refer to one of those. Alright, once we're in the air, the first thing we're going to look at is going to be the targeting pod. As I mentioned before, the targeting pod is one of the most important features or tools as a fighter pilot with a firewill mod, especially if you're, or pretty much only if you're doing air-to-ground operations, so ground attack, close air support, that kind of stuff. So one thing that's pretty important for starter pilots to look up is your keybind for the targeting pod. In order to find that keybind, you press escape, hit options, controls, and then in common you will see targeting camera pretty much on the first. You don't even have to scroll. For me that's left, alt and second mouse button, or right mouse button. For you, you need to remember or configure that key to whatever suits you best, because it's really necessary and really important. I think the standard keybind for vanilla ArmA 3 is left control and right click. The problem with that is that for me the thrust is also set to left control and right click by default, and then you'll decrease your thrust every time you enter the target camera, so it's not that good. I changed that to the alt key. So let's enter the targeting pod, and you'll see this little camera here. I usually zoom out once so I've got a better overview of what's going on. You see this camera that you can move around with your mouse. You can still control the aircraft with your movement keys, and you can zoom in and out with the plus and minus on the numpad. You can zoom in on up to 8.6 times on this targeting pod. And now if you're trying to look at something, for example I want to take a look at this radar station, you'll see that I always have to readjust my camera, and for example if I have to realign my aircraft, level this out with the horizon, you'll see that we're completely off target now. Okay, so in order to lock your camera onto the ground you have to press the terrain lock button. For me that's left control and T. As you can see, we are stabilized on the ground that we're looking at. I can still move the camera around. It is not fixed, but it is locked onto the ground if I don't put in any controls. If I change the heading or the roll of my aircraft in any way, you can still see that my camera is perfectly on target. Another function that goes along with this is the tracking of moving targets, vehicles to be more precise, and I have set up this little boat patrol around here. Let me just find it. There they are. Okay, so once you have set it to area, you need to have set it to area. You can't have it in the regular mode. Once you've set it to area, just navigate near a vehicle that's moving, and you'll see it snaps to point, and the vehicle is locked. Now, what you have to be careful with is that once you move the camera again, you lose the track. So once it snaps to point, try and not move the mouse around too much. It's a bit of a finicky operation, but once you got it locked, just don't move your mouse and you should be good. Now this is pretty useful, especially in combination with your laser designator. If you press next weapon, you will see the laser designator, which is by default turned off. You can then turn it on by simply pressing your fire button. Now you can see that there's a laser, little red laser marker symbol appearing, and the laser is on. Now once we switch to thermals, yeah, I'm not here. Yeah, once we switch to thermals, we can see on the ground that you've got this fat, really big white dot going around. So I will make this visible by turning it off and on, and you can see this white dot going off and on. This is especially useful if the JTAC on the ground is using the his own laser designator. You can basically see it from really far away, and what you can also notice is the further you zoom out, the bigger the dot gets. Okay, so right now it's bigger than a house pretty much. If you look at one of the towns, so you can see that houses are pretty small, and my dot is really big. Once I zoom in, the dot's not much bigger than a window of one of the houses. So if you want to find the dot of the JTAC, just zoom out and look for the big white dot that he's projecting onto the target. A good practice, once you're done using the laser designator or the targeting pod in general, turn off your laser designator so others aren't irritated by it or disturbed in their target acquisition, and turn off the area lock and then try and face it forward again. That way, if you're in a heated situation trying to find the target with your laser designator and you enter the laser designator, you won't have to kind of get your bearing straight and find out where you're pointing before you can start acquiring the target, because you always have it facing the way your aircraft is facing. You always know which direction you want to turn. Okay, that's it for the targeting pod for now. The next feature I'm going to talk about is the gun. Now, as I mentioned before, the gun isn't really important for the F-35, but this is not a tutorial about the F-35, it's a tutorial about the air weapon system and flying attack aircraft in general. So once I select the weapon, the 25mm cannon, you will see this crosshair appearing in front of us in the, well, roundabout in the center of the HUD. You can see it kind of moving around. You can also see the number below it indicating the range to the target that you're pointing at. And what you can also see is that this crosshair kind of changes position depending on how far away the target is that you're looking at. So right now, as you can see, it's kind of in the lower half of the HUD. If I move the target closer, 1.5 clicks, you can see that it's pretty much right in the center. This is because this little crosshair or circle with point in between indicates the projected point of impact of the weapon that you have selected right now. It's also called a CCIP, for constantly computed impact point. I'm going to be referring to this abbreviation in the rest of the video, so please keep in mind that the CCIP is this crosshair which kind of predicts where you're going to hit with your gun. Now if we enter the targeting pod with the gun selected, you can also see that a little white crosshair has appeared next to the big one that we can control. The white one corresponds to the CCIP in the targeting pod. So basically I'm going to fire at this big excavator right now, and you can see that I'm hitting the excavator. Okay. So this is the projected impact point, or CCIP. What's really important to notice here is, or to note here, is that this CCIP is not only applicable to guns, but to all kinds of unguided weapons, including rockets and unguided bombs, both dumb bombs and cluster bombs and all the stuff you can drop on the enemy. They all use the CCIP in the same way the gun does. Now, I cannot guarantee that the HUD looks exactly the same with this big circle and the little dot in between, but I can tell you that once you enter the targeting pod, this little white crosshair will always look the same way. So if you're using a rocket or a bomb or a gun, doesn't matter, this will show you where your your rounds, your ordnance of whatever kind will impact. Okay? This is really important for precision strafing runs in the A-10, dropping all kinds of rockets or missile bombs on the enemy. Alright, what's next on my list? Alright, anti-air. So in order to show you the anti-air functionality of the firewill arsenal, what I'm going to do is I am going to scramble the Air Force. Be right back. Yeah, I'm back, and the enemy has sent a squadron of MiG-29s to intercept us. Now, let's talk about some of the air-to-air missiles that we have on board. We have two kinds. We've got the medium-range radar-guided ones and the short-range infrared-guided ones. Now, since the enemy is pretty far away still, we will use the medium-range ones first. As I mentioned before, the medium-range missiles do not need their own or your own radar to be turned on, since they have their own radar system built in. The problem with this is you will still need a radar contact to lock onto, which I've got right here on my left. So I'll just fire. You see that two squares are overlapping each other, which means the missile's ready to fire. I'm going to try and point away from them a little bit, and you can see that one of the boxes has turned, basically has disappeared. Once I align myself, I see those two boxes covering each other, and I'm ready to fire. Now this is going to be a pretty harsh angle for the missile, so I will try and turn towards them a bit. Here we go. Okay, firing missile. And hit. That was a hit. Locking onto the second one. Oh, he's dropping flares like hell. Now this is too close range for the MRAM, so I'm going to switch to the Sidewinder, and you can hear the characteristic tone of the Sidewinder locking on. You can see him going full mayhem. Oh, something's shooting at them as well. That looks like a kill. Alright, here we go. Yeah, the carrier is obviously equipped with ground-to-air missile systems. In order to make sure that we are now alone in the sky, I'm going to turn on my radar. You can see the radar screen on the right. I've got a couple of parachutes coming in. Looks like we've dealt with all of them. You have seen both an MRAM and a Sidewinder in action. For the MRAM, I used the next target key, which for me is R. I think that's vanilla. And for the, I think that's a good practice for most anti-aircraft missiles. Just try and use R. If that doesn't work, look at the target and press T, or the direct lock button. Okay, we have ticked off air-to-air combat. If you have any questions about that, since that was pretty quick, let me know in the comments and I'll try and explain it in more detail. Now moving on to the ground targets, if we look at them on the mission map, we can see that we're trying to push onto this island here. We've got some forces, light reconnaissance and infantry forces moving across this bridge, and the enemy has apparently set up an anti-air system on this hill, which this symbol indicates. So usually anti-air systems work with radar, both passive and active, and the passive radar uses enemy radar signatures or emissions to track their movement. So I will turn off my radar right now to give him a hard time finding me. And looking onto this hill, I can actually already see a fire control radar dot. The fire control radar always will create dots where it detects vehicles. Oh, and now you can see on the radar screen already that there is a radar symbol, a symbol for an active radar on this area. So that's a perfect opportunity, what a coincidence, a perfect opportunity for us to use the AGM-88 HARM for your if you don't remember, the HARM stands for, or the ARM stands for anti-radiation missile. So I'm looking towards this. I will now actually look at it with the targeting pod to make sure I'm looking at a radar target. Okay, the hill should be around here somewhere. I'm pretty sure. Oh, this is it. This looks like a classic shield with a radar dish on top. I'm going to use the T key And here we go. Usually when you have one continuous square means the target is an adequate target for your weapon, so you can potentially lock onto it. You just need to get in range or need to get the angle on it, stuff like that. So if you get that square, it's already a good sign for you to be able to fight this target with the weapon that you have equipped. Now turning towards it, you can already see that I have an angle on the target right now from here, which is pretty strong. You don't have that in most aircraft, but the F-35 is equipped with a spherical coverage sensors suite that you can use in order to engage targets that are basically perpendicular to you, so 90 degrees in every direction, which is kind of nice. So now I'm just going to watch this show as I will fire the missile away. You can see it coming in from here. Boom! We've torn down all the structures around the impact zone, and the vehicle is smoking. It looks like it's disabled. We've got dismounts. This is looking good. Here we go, fireball. That's what I want to see. Okay, so our harm has done its job really well. We have been able to take out the enemy air defense easily from more than, well, I'm going to say about 4 kilometers away, at least further away than the enemy could ever engage us. And now we can take our time focusing on the enemy ground units. Now looking at the HUD again, you can see several dots of enemy ground units moving around. I'm not sure if you can get those in every aircraft, but I'm just gonna rely on them for now in order to demonstrate this to you. What you can do if you do not have any of these dots helping you, and you just wanna, you can see that on the bottom right screen you've got the radar, right, and you can see the white dots signaling that there's an enemy, or basically an unknown ground vehicle stationed at this position, and you want to position your targeting pod on that vehicle. There's a nice little trick that I always like to use, which is basically switch to your laser pointer and turn it on, and you will see, once I turn myself towards it a bit, you will see the red dot appearing on your radar screen on the bottom right. Now what you can do is align that radar, or align that dot with the radar signature, and you're roughly in the area of what you want to see. And look at that, I found a tank. So as you can see now, since you've got eyes on the tank, if your targeting pod doesn't snap on the tank immediately, try pressing T once or pressing lock on once, no matter what weapon you have equipped, and that will basically register the target for your targeting pod. And as you can see now, here we go, we have the target as a lock, and we can track it and laze it and deal with it as we deem necessary. I can unlock the target, press T again to release target, and I can still track this with my laser designator targeting pod, so this is pretty neat. Now let's look at the different weapons that we have available for air-to-ground operations. We have dealt with the harms. Let's look at the AGMs. Let me just switch through here. Where's my AGM? There it is. Okay. The AGM, we have got the AGM on board in two different variants. The IIR, infrared guided one, is equipped right now. Since the vehicle is, as you can see from the camera, since the vehicle is moving, probably been moving for a while, we're safe to assume that the vehicle is hot and can easily be engaged with infrared seeking missiles. So let's look at our targeting pod. For convenience and for cross interference reasons, I will turn off my laser designator right now, switch back to my infrared guided missile, and press lock, and you can see the famous white square again. We have a potential target, and again I am aligned 90 degrees to the target, and I can fire if I wanted to. Now since I only have 3 targets down there, I will fire actually. Or first of all, right, okay, so right now I couldn't fire because if these kind of interrupted, I'm going to call them interrupted, I don't have any better vocabulary for it. If these interrupted squares appear, that means you've lost direct line of sight to the target. Since we've turned around again and we have basically maneuvered around this foliage that covered the tank, we can now lock onto it again. And we're going to fire. Here we go. Here comes the missile. And that is a hit. Okay, now as I mentioned before, for some tanks, in order to crack some of those tanks, you might need more firepower than just one missile. What I couldn't demonstrate right now, which is kind of sad, I kind of forgot that, since I have two different variants of the AGM 65 on me, and it had selected the infrared guided one first. If you've got several variants of one ammunitions type, like the AGM 65, and you don't have the one selected that you want to use the scroll wheel option, and then you'll get like an option as if you want to reload a magazine. For example, right now I would get the option reload AGM 65 G if I still had that on board, which I don't. Since this is my last AGM left, it automatically switched to that one. Oh, one more thing I forgot to mention. If you look at the this little white, or this little circle that's appearing on the HUD, that's basically locked on the terrain, that indicates where your targeting pod is facing, which is really useful if you're in a combat situation and you need to do quick attacks on the same position. You don't know where to align your aircraft to for the next bomb to drop. You see that circle on the ground, you just point right at it and hit it. Okay, so that's good for quickly finding the target that you're facing in the heat of the battle. Okay, so AGMs are pretty clear. If there's any more questions on that, please let me know. Our next chapter is going to be the small diameter bomb 2. As I mentioned before, those are really powerful because they incorporate 3 different guidance methods. That's why I packed them. That's why I brought them along, because I can demonstrate all guidance methods that I need to with one simple weapon, and I can also show you how to get the full potential out of this little bomb. Okay, in order to demonstrate the different guidance methods, I'm going to go through them one by one. Let's try and use them with laser first. Since laser doesn't specifically require a vehicle, I will try and unleash destructive urges onto this hangar here. Okay, so I want to bomb this hangar. Now, in order to tell the SDB II to use laser guided attack mode, what you have to do is turn on your laser, and that's pretty much it. Make sure that you do not have a GPS target selected. How that's done will be shown to you once we get to the GPS guidance section. First of all, laser target. Now you've got the circle again showing you where your laser targeting pod is aiming. You also have your CCP. As you can see now, it's a lot further down than the gun CCIP. Sorry, I was meant to say CCIP. It was a lot further below the HUD center than the gun, because obviously a bomb drops faster, or drops deep, has a higher drop curve than the gun. Okay, so now all you got to do is use that CCIP, kind of roughly align it with the targeting pod, and drop your bomb. Bomb away. Now on the bottom left you can see caution, GPS data not found. Ignore that. You're not using GPS guidance, you're using laser guidance, so that's not really important for you. Now we'll just watch the magic happen, and here it comes. Okay, that was the bomb. As I said before, 250 pounds, not that strong and not really useful for tearing down building complexes. Okay, I just did that for demonstration purposes. This bomb was designed against vehicles and small entrenched positions, not buildings or city blocks or whatever you want to tear down with them. Okay, so that's the laser guidance, pretty straightforward. Now let's get the GPS guidance out next. In order to do that, I'll switch off my laser to prevent interference and switch back to the SDB. Okay, GPS guidance. This works for every GPS missile, as did the laser method work for every laser missile. for every laser guided bomb, and this one works for every laser guided for every GPS guided missile. Okay, GPS guidance. In order to use GPS guidance, you need the targeting pod, as I said before, but this one's obviously internal on the F-35. You will need to use your scroll wheel option, open ITGT, integrated targeting system, and you will have this little multifunction display that basically has a map that you can use the same controls on as you can use on the regular map. So right mouse button and drag it along, scroll wheel to zoom in and out. Okay, now we've got several methods of entering a target that we want to attack. The first method is pretty simple. On the left side you have 4 different buttons that are important for this, basically for this direct input method. You will basically need to use those from top to bottom in the order that they're aligned. So the first one is called designate, DGN. You click that, and then you left click that, and you left click the point on the map you want to attack, and you'll have this blue targeting position appearing. Now, as I just noticed, I'm slowly turning towards the ground. So another quick lesson is you can at any point press escape to exit the targeting pod, and your changes will always be saved. There's no need to save changes or do other fancy stuff. Just exit whenever you have to, and then once your target is, or your aircraft is realigned and recentered, you can then open it again, and as you can see, our target position is still there. Now let's go ahead and select this target position, and you will have this circle appearing around it, which means the target is locked and ready to be engaged by a bomb. You need the target to be selected in order for the bomb to engage it, okay? You can't engage targets that are not selected. Drop it again. What the hell is going on? Okay, this should be stable. Alright, right, you need the target to be selected in order to engage it. If you do now want to deselect it, to make sure that, for example, if you want to use laser guidance, you don't want your GPS guidance to interfere, you want to deselect it, hit the clear button, okay? This is also required if you want to select a different target. You first have to clear your current target. I will demonstrate that in a second. Now, if you want to get rid of the targeting position, what you can do is hit the delete button. Now, you might be asking, how does the system know which target you want to delete? This is pretty simple. On the top here you have slot number display, which displays the current target slot you have selected. With the arrow buttons on top of all these 4 buttons here on the top left, you can then switch through the different slots. You have up to 5 slots available, and as you can see, we can switch through them all the way up to 5 and not any higher. Now let's enter a couple more targets, okay? So we have this gas stations. Gas stations are always nice to light up. So let's target that, hit designate, hit the gas station, and as long as you've got a different slot selected, you will see another target position appearing. What's also good is try and destroy the enemy infrastructure. So let's go ahead and select a different slot and target the harbor, okay? Designate harbor. Okay, now you might not be the one that picks the target actually. So if you're cooperating with a laser designating, or basically just a JTAC on the ground, an air controller on the ground, he might be feeding you grid references. So he might be feeding you numbers, 8 or 10 figure numbers that you can enter in your targeting pod in the following way. For example, the JTAC wants to hit this building. They've set up a machine gun position facing the bridge, and they want to have it blown up. Just making sure they're crashing. Okay. They want to have it blown up. So the grid for this is going to be 1, 1, 3, 8. Basically, kind of estimate this from 1 to 10. So this is 1, this is 10, this is 0, this is 10, and then kind of estimate what point it is on a scale. So for me, that's an 8. 1, 1, 3, 8, and second grid is going to be 0540 because it's basically directly on the line, so that's a 0. So 11380540. So the JTAG just gave us the grid 11380540, and we want to make a new target. First of all, you've got to make sure that you select a target slot that is not already occupied. So we have position 3 occupied, moving up to position 4. Second, select this text box below and enter the grid that you have been given, 11380540. Third, you have to make sure that you have the correct digit amount selected. On the top you will see 8 digits, which is the one we're going to want to use now. In case someone gives you a 10-digit grid, hit the grid button and it will switch to 10-digit grids. But right now we want to use 8 digits, so switch back to 8. Obviously the more grid digits you have, the more accurate it gets. The 10-digit grid will give you the position up to 1 meter accuracy, and the 8-digit grid obviously up to 10 meter accuracy, which is enough if you want to hit a house, really. Okay, now we're going to hit enter, and it says slot 4 saved on the bottom left, and we can see that slot 4 has appeared pretty much in the middle of that house. So kudos to me for estimating the exact grid here. That's pretty nice. And we can then use this target for our targeting purposes. Alright, so let's turn back towards the town that we want to harass. Right. Okay, so we're back in the AO now, and we want to bomb the GPS guided targets, GPS designated targets that we have selected in the ITGT. So first of all, you want to select the target that you want to bomb. So first I would like to light up the gas station. So let's select position number 2 and hit select, and as you can see you've got this circle appearing, which means the target is ready to be engaged. Now luckily I still have my camera locked onto the island. Just head for the bridge area here and look for the gas station around here somewhere. It should be in this area, I'm pretty sure. Let's check the map again. Okay, so this is the gas station. Okay, now I have my GPS system primed on the target, and I have selected my GPU. Now, one thing that you got to make sure is basically that you have selected the GPS mode on your targeting system. That's another button, which is located all the way down here. It's called mode. Now, you'll see on the top, all the way on the top here, that the mode is set to GPS by default, which is good. If you want to switch it later on, you have to hit it here and switch to dual. The two modes are GPS and dual. What dual is will be explained in just a second. Alright, so we've got it switched to GPS and ready to release ordnance on our target. So let's align. Just assume that the JTAG has given us free choice of attack and direction, and again align the CCAP, drop your ordnance, and that's pretty much it. If you don't want to aim your nose on the target, what you can do is basically use the CCAP in the targeting pod while flying straight, which gives it a bit more, you know, aesthetic style to it. Okay, let's wait for the bomb to impact. Here it goes, and we have a nice fireball. That was just what I wanted to see. As you can see, the GPS target works just as fine as the laser one. Obviously, the advantage is you don't need to have eyes on it yourself. I could demonstrate this easily by dropping another one roughly in the area, and you'll see that even if I'm completely off target with my CCIP, down here, there's my CCIP. If I'm completely off target, the GPS guided bomb will still find its target accurately, so you don't need to have direct eyes on the target. You can get a rough grid, or an accurate grid from the guys on the ground, and roughly drop it in the direction of that target, and it'll find its way on its own without actually having eyes on the target, other than the laser designated target, which you kind of need to know where it's at. Okay. I'll use my remaining 2 bombs to demonstrate the radar guidance and the dual guidance, which are both really important feature of the small diameter bomb and many other advanced guided bombs. Okay, first of all we are going to use the radar guidance. In order to do that, we have to make sure that the GPS guidance is turned completely off. There's a simple way to do that. Just hit clear. Okay, any target that you might have selected will then be cleared, and you will have no more targets selected, and that's it. That's absolutely it. Nothing else to do. Now, it doesn't matter which mode you have selected if you want to use pure radar guidance for the SDB. Alright, let us use the one that's down there. So what you have to keep in mind using the radar guidance on the SDBs is they're a bit special because they have their own free will. You can't lock onto any specific targets with that. You just have to drop it in the area, and they have their own system of prioritizing vehicles that are deemed more dangerous to you. I haven't fully understood how they do that, but they do it, and they just select the vehicle that they're going to bomb. So if the JTAG happened to have parked his own Humvee next to the vehicle he wants to have bombed, well, tough luck. He's going to lose that Humvee. Now all you got to do is, again, roughly aim for the target with your CCAP, release ordnance, and that's it. Again, it's going to tell you no GPS data found because you cleared all targets, but that's not a problem because this time we are going for radar guidance. Okay, so let's look at that, and we are going to see a nice fireball. Here goes, and you can see the effect that the bomb has, this little bomb has on the tank, is absolutely devastating. So that's what they were built for. Okay, they're built to destroy vehicles. Alright, now this was the pure radar guidance, which is especially useful if you have line of sight on the target. You can track it and you can bomb it. If the target's moving, it's still pretty reliable, but kind of hard to control. It might be moving too far out of the drop area, and the bomb might be switching to a different target that is closer to the center, stuff like that. So it's kind of hard to control. In order to do that, I encourage you to use laser guidance, because you can simply control the laser designator and move it with the target as the target moves along. Okay, so let's assume that for the dual guidance, you've got a JTAG on the ground, Joint Terminal Attack Controller, for those who don't know. A JTAG on the ground basically situated across this bridge on the hill there, and he doesn't have an accurate grid on the target because he, for some reason, he lost his map tools or whatever. He only has a laser designator, SOFLAM, that he can light up the target with, and he's going to tell you the target is somewhere in grid 112052. So this is basically the center of the town. Plenty of buildings are within this grid, and he can't really tell you which one it is. He just wants you to drop a bomb in there and then follow his laser. So what you can do is basically use the dual guidance to give the bomb a rough direction via GPS coordinates for the mid-course approach, and then as soon as the bomb reaches terminal approach, it will switch to laser or radar guidance, depending on which bomb you have, which bomb supports which guidance method. It will switch to a different guidance method for the terminal approach and scan for targets there. If it does not find any targets on the terminal approach, either laser or radar or infrared targets, it will basically fall back or return to the GPS guidance and just head to the GPS target that you have saved and selected. So let's open the ITGT system for this, and we're going to designate the center of the grid that I just mentioned as our target. I've cleared it out completely, as you can see, to basically give it a fresh start. And then hit select. That's really important, as I said before. Now what you also have to do is obviously switch to dual mode, so that dual mode is displayed up here, and as you can see I am crashing. Great. Anyway, alright, so that's it for the GPS part. Now obviously you still need a laser, and since we don't have a friendly JTAG on the ground, in reality we're just going to simulate it with our own laser designator. So I actually, as the JTAG, I decided I want this building to be torn down. So I'm going to laser that, and so what's going to happen now is the bomb will basically fly to the center of the grid, which is around this area, and then will scan for laser targets or radar targets. And obviously it will only find a laser target, which is this house, which is on this house, and then it will switch to the laser target. Okay, so let's watch it happen. We're going to follow the same procedure as all the previous bomb deployments. Just use your CCIP and roughly align it with the target. Now I will be using the targeting pod CCIP this time. You can see it on the left here. And I will deliberately drop the bomb far so that you can see that it has a really big potential for correcting any offset on the drop. Alright, I'll just make a left turn here and watch. Oh, we're off target here. And as on the bottom left, if you watch the bottom left, you'll see some messages coming in. Usually the first one you'll get is dual mode activated, which should happen any time now. Dual mode activated. It says target not found, but that's not a problem. As you can see, we hit directly on the target. The center of the target that we had designated in the GPS guidance would have been around here, but we actually hit here, so that proves that that the bomb actually switched to the laser guidance target, even if on the bottom left it said target not found. Now it says that because it initially scans for radar targets. Okay, so that's the prioritized target type, and if there aren't any radar targets around, it refers to laser guidance. Now if there aren't any laser targets either, it will switch back to the GPS guidance and just hit the GPS target that has been selected before. So that brings me basically to the complication that might happen if you use this method. If you want to hit your laser target, you can't have a GPS target around as well. It will always hit the GPS target before it hits the laser target in dual mode. If you want to go purely for laser, that's just fine. All you got to do, as I mentioned before, clear out your target, select the GPS guided mode, and designate a target with the laser, and you're fine. Even if there's a ton of GPS radar targets around, doesn't matter. Your laser will dictate the bomb where to drop. Okay, that's it for the GPS guidance, or basically for the dual guidance. Last thing I want to demonstrate is the laser-guided missiles. Now, I didn't have a laser-guided AGM on board, as you might have noticed, but instead I brought these advanced precision kill weapon system Hydras, which I mentioned before. As I also said, these are pretty neat because you can carry 7 of those, while you can only carry 1 laser-guided AGM or 3 differently guided AGMs. I don't have any vehicles left to kill with this, so I'm just going to use something different. Obviously another one of those houses will do just fine. I already have my laser turned on, so all I got to do is press T, and you can see that there's the continuous square, which means the target is eligible for attack, and the second square is not completely closed around the first one, so we still need to angle ourselves in the correct way, and you can see that we have a lock. Alright, I'm going to fire right now. Missile away. Here we go. Okay, so this is pretty simple. Just hit T or whatever your key is to lock on, and then hit the target with the respective missile. If there are any more questions about this, which I do not assume since it's pretty straightforward, just let me know, otherwise I'd leave it at that. Now that concludes my tutorial completely. If you've got any suggestions, feedback, I'm always happy to have it. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching, and I wish you the best success in testing stuff out for yourself. Goodbye.